Lance by Chance. The untold story of him wrestling as of on Earth. LanceByChance.com.
Dave, you know what the music means. How's it going today?
Oh, baby, it's going so good. I got these hoes out here testing me. I got all kinds of things going on. Welcome to the Working Fans Podcast, baby. What you listening to?
Hey. Oh, you know, that's the 531 theme music, because this week we are talking 531 top WWE/WWF feuds.
Volume 2, really. This is actually the second time we've done this list, but I don't remember the first one. So, any fans out there? Yeah. So any fans out there? We didn't go back and listen to it. Fuck you. We were busy. So if you remember, go back and look and see if it's the exact same one. I'm kind of curious how we make out with this. But
yeah, we're out in these streets finding how many people makes a party. But today we are talking feuds.
Yeah,
and I'm going to kick it off with Scott from Voluntown.
Kick it
That's
off,
about
baby.
as scary as that story is going to get.
Scotty.
But he's got WWF versus WCW, Austin versus McMahon, Ultimate Warrior versus the English language, Brett versus Sean, and WWE writers versus the fans.
I remember that one from the last time. That's one of the ones I always remember. He's got some good singers right there. That's Scotty.
Yeah, Ultimate Warrior definitely butchered the English language as well as the in-ring work. I think the WWF versus WCW feud, probably one of the it is the biggest in history. It's bigger than New Japan and All Japan, bigger than Mid-South and Crockett.
Yeah, no, there's no comparison. When you look at the real WCW versus not the invasion angle they did, which even did good business for them in the beginning, but the actual real WCW versus WWE feud, that's the biggest box office of all time. It's still nothing can touch that. Ratings will never be the same.
Yeah, the Monday Night Wars are talked about, and it's something that it seems like Vince wants to recreate, or the wrestling business in itself is recreating, like we just recently had with Wednesday Night Wars. Which is it really a war, or is it just two programs on at the same time?
It's so hard to say nowadays because, think about it, like WWE is such a different place now, too. They have, more money than ever. Their ratings are down, but they're also spread out over 3 different brands now. So it's really hard to say. I just look at it as it was kind of 2 shows around the same time, but one of them was really put there just to hurt the other. And then thankfully somebody stepped in and said, hey, why don't you move that show to another night? So, which I think is great for wrestling fans. I can watch both shows now, and both shows
now we have wrestling every night.
Yeah, and it's a lot of wrestling, but watch what you want. You got to start making cuts. Not everybody can make it to WrestleMania, and probably not everybody can be on your show during the week. And you know what? If you do want to watch them all, there's DVR. There's ways of getting around it. So just do what you like, folks.
Yeah, now who do you got?
Ain't no reason to get upset. This ain't no war.
Now, who do you got for our first list this week?
The man who came up with this idea, and I don't think he knew that we had done this before, and I didn't tell him because I'm forgetful. Mikey and Fred, always contributing stuff.
If he's going to suggest a list, we should do it. He's
right. He always brings it. So he wants to make a suggestion. He's getting out here. All right, we got Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan. Jake the Snake Roberts and Macho Man Randy Savage. Bret Hart and HBK. John Cena and Rock, and Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. A lot of good ones here. I'm going to say Jake the Snake and Macho Man. The first time I ever saw a friggin' cobra bite somebody's arm in a wrestling ring. Might be the only time, too. So just amazing. I know Jake the Snake told a story on Joe Rogan about how Macho Man was super paranoid behind the scenes and made Jake actually have the snake bite him to make sure there was no venom in the snake beforehand.
It's crazy that he'll be willing to go along with the spot. You just got to make the snake bite you. And it's like,
right.
All right.
Yeah. He's like, have him bite you in the leg. And Jake was like, my dick isn't good enough? Thanks. What else am I going to do?
Now, the next list I'm going to bring is from Jake St. John, author of Night Full of Diamonds, available now on Amazon.
That's our boy.
Order one, support our man there. Now, he's got Brett versus Sean, Austin McMahon, Savage Flair, Brian Authority, and Demolition Colossal Connection.
It's an interesting one to bring in there. Yeah, Demolition, excuse me, actually got their third WWF World Tag title reign over the Colossal Connection of Andre the Giant and Haku, which was a very interesting feud at the time because Demolition were running roughshod over everybody. The Road
That's
Warriors
like 87, 88, right?
What's that?
That's 87, 88? Somewhere in that time frame?
I would say more 89 because Legion of Doom is going to come there at 90 and Demolition have the tag belts back by then. So, yeah.
I just asked because I've been watching a lot of that old WWF, and I have seen Haku and Andre. I must have been watching 88 then.
Yeah, it could have been 89.
This particular feud, but I did see them as a team, and I didn't put them together as the Colossal Connection for some reason.
Yeah. What a badass, like, behind the scenes, too, huh? You imagine, like, you ain't taking liberties with Haku and Andre in the ring. That shit ain't happening.
But Jake, he's got a lot of heavy hitters on here. Brett Sean is going to show up on a lot. Austin McMahon. Savage Flair is one that I was happy to see. And Brian Authority, probably underrated. I don't know how many people are going to pick it, but it did provide the best babyface run Brian might have had in the company.
It did, and it was very natural. It was very organic. It was something the WWE, you could tell, did not want to get over, and it did. And it really put Brian on the map, even till now. I think he still gets one of the biggest reactions when we do have fans, in arenas. So super cool to see that on the list.
100%. Now, who do you have next?
I got Mike Flynn. He's got from NXT, going down to NXT brand. He's got Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa.
Ooh, I didn't even think about NXT. That's such a good pick.
Yeah, it is a great pick. Austin versus Rock. Rock versus Triple H. HBK versus Jericho. And again, we're going down to NXT again with this one, really, I think, for at least their prime battles. Although they would be on the main roster again later. I'm talking Bayley and Sasha. Obviously, their NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2, I believe, 2015, was one of the best matches of all time.
Yeah. Damn, I'm really upset I didn't think NXT as far as like WWE, WWF feuds, because for me, it's like classic era. And then, I didn't really have anything newer, but we got the real ZSJ, Zach St. John. He's got Savage Hogan, Austin McMahon, Brett Sean, Jericho Sean, and Austin and Brett.
Austin and Brett, yeah. I forgot to put that on my list. That should definitely be one that's in there for sure. I mean,
Savage Hogan is a major one, but that's more a classic to us.
Yeah, Austin and Brett is that I wanted to say.
Brother.
What's that?
Getting distracted by those texts.
I'm actually trying to track down our next guest list, but I am receiving it.
Did you bring us a list, brother?
No. That was my boy. That was my boy Pete Pulowski. What's up, Pete? If you're listening, I shout out your full name on the show.
Shout out to Pete going out there and getting his life, kayfabe.
Yeah, he's getting his life taken care of, baby. He's doing big things. Shout out to the man who helps me out behind the scenes out here. Gets my castle looking good and all kinds of shit. So.
I know, though. Isn't that important, though? Like, if you're doing something that you're not enjoying in life, that you kind of take your own steps to be able to turn your life around and live a life that you want to. Not to get too deep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So My boy Pete is making some changes in his life. At 26, he's jumping on things as well as he should, and I'm proud of the kid. And he helps me out with stuff all the time, and that's something too. So 2 life lessons will shed on you today. Yes, don't be afraid to take the jump, and also put good people in your life around you. If you hang out with dog shit, you're gonna become dog shit. That's how it goes, baby. You're gonna smell like dog shit. Don't hang out with dog shit. Woo! That's all I gotta say.
That's today's
I'm giving you pearls.
today's public service announcement from the Working Fans podcast. Now, next list I got Kevin Dignam. He's got Hogan Andre 87, Savage Steamboat, which once again upset I didn't put on there. Yeah. Zabisco Bruno. You can almost tell the ages are
old school.
Yes. I actually got a DVD set because it contains matches from that feud on it. So Taker HBK and Cena Nexus. I really like that list. Hogan Andre, that's classic. Savage Steamboat, pissed I didn't use it. And Zabisco Bruno, one of the classic stories out there, and a storyline we brought up recently with the QT Marshall and Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, there are little similarities. You know what's funny though? I didn't care for Cena and Nexus, but I really like the fact it made his list with all the other lists because it shows what a real scope and variety this guy has on this list. Like he has a lot of interesting stuff that he's into. I like originality. So my man Dingman there, Kevin Dingham, is that his name?
Dignam, yep.
Dignam. Yeah, well, he's don't get indignant with me, Joseph.
Hey, at least we didn't give you that man from Illinois that lost his father that you would wrestle with his last name with.
I did struggle, and we're happy that we're not happy. Well, we hope he's doing okay, and our thoughts are with him. Yes,
he's doing as good as can be expected. Shout out to Chris Zauha. Rest in peace, Big Al.
You got a list from him?
Speaking of Al, I've got Albert Bettis. He's got Brett versus Sean, Hogan versus Savage, Rock versus Austin, Hogan versus Piper, and Hogan versus Andre. That's a diverse list, but a diverse classic list. And I mean, really, what our golden age, mid 80s to mid 90s.
Yeah, 1000%. When you talk about classics, though, when you talk about the golden age, it's got to be this next guy I got a list from right here. Randy Osgood. All right. The golden age.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be Randy or AJ.
No, I didn't get a list from AJ. I did not. I kind of mentioned him to like get me a list if he could or we could do it, but we didn't get in touch in time. So, AJ, if you're out there, I will take the heat on this one. All right. I know you wanted to be here. So, all right. We got from Randy Osgood, Austin versus Rock, Jericho versus HBK. Jericho versus HBK. I think it's the second time that made a list. Hogan versus Piper, Austin McMahon, and Randy's thinking Gargano versus Ciampa. What?
I thought he was going to go Gotch versus Hackenschmidt.
No. Incest.
Gargano versus Ciampa. That's another time that it's popping up, and I'm pissed it's not on my list.
They're all insects to the great Kenny Omega, though.
Now, you want to give us another list? Because I ran off a couple in a row there.
You did, but I think you got more than me. So I got our boy.
How many lists you got left, actually?
I got one more and myself, too. I got two more lists altogether.
All right, I'll knock off a couple lists because I got two more plus me.
Okay.
We shouted him out earlier, Chris Zauha. He's got Hogan versus Orndorff, Hogan versus Piper, Hogan versus Savage, Brett versus Sean, and Rock versus Austin.
Brett versus Sean making some lists. I'm happy to see that. Two of my favorites.
That's definitely been on a few. Now, Jason Gross has DX versus the Nation of Domination.
Wait, I think you gave me his list, actually. I didn't read that. Didn't you say that?
Did. I didn't cross them out. Why don't you tell them who they got after DX?
All right, Jason Gross. He gave us DX versus the Nation of Domination, Taker versus Mankind and Kane. What?
I said no way. Like it surprised me. It was a joke that died.
Sorry, it died. Yeah. Anyway, Austin versus McMahon, the Dudleys versus the APA, ENC, also known as Edge and Christian, versus the Hardy Boys, and Hogan versus Ted DiBiase. So solid list by my man right there.
Solid list. DX versus Nation. I'd want to go back and watch, definitely.
Jason Gross is the guy who went to see Ronnie Garvin versus Ric Flair when he was like 7 years old.
Hell of a show to see.
Yeah,
now,
he mentioned it on the live show. I was happy.
He did. Now I'll give you my list next. I got Hogan versus Andre, Flair versus Savage, Austin McMahon, Austin Brett, and Vince versus the fans. I see it less as the WWE writers versus the fans and more Vince as the head of that group that just it almost seems like they don't give fans what they'd want to see. It's a very weird relationship he has.
Yeah, a lot of times. He definitely loves to give what he wants. He knows what's best for us. Don't you forget it, pal. Well, I got a couple lists left. I got my own, and I got this guy right here. Jesse from New Hampshire. We're not going to forget about you. Rock versus Austin. Austin versus McMahon. Hardys versus ENC and the Dudleys. Cena versus Edge. And of this one, a very, very personal feud. Matt Hardy versus Edge. Based on the real-life things that were going on, where Edge started dating Matt Hardy's real-life girlfriend, Lita.
That's a hell of an idea. I didn't even I was thinking more storyline feuds. There are a few like that throughout the WWE time frame, like JBL versus Blue Meanie was one for a while.
HBK and Brett, I mean, that was real life and storyline. So, I mean, again, that made our list, but you know what I mean? Yeah, there's that thing where it weaves in and out. Hogan and Savage had some real life heat at times.
Yes. Now, going over these lists.
We got one more list. Hold your damn horses here.
I'm skipping over each other. I'm like, nah, man, we could do it without you.
Hogan versus Rowdy Piper. Hogan versus Andre. Austin versus McMahon. HBK versus Brett. And Rock versus Austin. I went with heavy hitters.
Yeah, and that really kind of leads me to where I was going. So it's got to be Austin McMahon makes the list, right?
I think so.
And Sean and Brett.
Sure.
I've seen that pop up on a few. And Hogan Andre, get that last slot.
Yeah, I think that was there.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Now, talk about a tough
what
time
goes?
to boot.
Let's talk about this before we boot anybody. What goes into a good feud in your eyes?
I mean, as far as WWE making the company for a amount of time, because it seems like when WWE is at its best, it's writing one of those major feuds. You know, like Austin McMahon set up the modern era.
Sure.
Carried the Attitude Era, arguably.
Yeah.
Hogan Andre, I feel like set off that first run that the WWF had when they became a major player. It was first couple WrestleManias. Sean and Brett was a good feud, but it came at a time when the WWE was only so big. You know, the feud either side of it were so much larger.
The reason why I asked this though is because, and I was thinking we boot that one too, but I do want to point out as devil's advocate, just for food for thought, out of all three of these, the most personal actual feud is Brett and HBK.
It is, but I think
it's just about box office.
It sucks because they're all three iconic feuds, but two resulted in box office. And I think if we have to find a criteria to set them apart, box office might have to be it, because otherwise these all hold like a important place in our minds. Okay. So, I mean, I hate to do it to Sean and Brett, but compared to those other two, it's now is the tough part. This is almost saying This is almost like saying which period of WWE was more important.
The golden era of the 80s.
Yeah, or
The Attitude Era.
Attitude Era of the 90s that really pushed things, God, so much further than I think anybody might have thought they would have gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can argue that happened in the 80s because they got exponentially bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But the 90s allowed wrestling to change from what it had been to what it is.
I got to go with,
I'm going to say Austin McMahon is so much bigger because it allowed so much of the audience, in addition to having that box office, it allowed people to live out that fantasy of telling your boss to get fucked and give him the stunner and getting out of there. And it's a lot easier to get behind than a giant man battling an actual giant.
Yeah, I agree. And if we talk box office, Hogan and Andre had the box office records, obviously, for attendance and stuff like that. But when you look at everything Austin McMahon did in terms of buy rates, pay-per-views, houses, like every week on Raw and house shows, it was just the biggest time in the business for as long as it lasted.
Didn't they say 1 year Austin might have cleared $1 million in merch sales or royalties?
I think it was a quarter. So it was like maybe 3 months, basically. Yeah, he had about $1 million in merchandise. Yeah.
But yeah, that shirt was on fire for the longest time.
Absolutely. So there you have it. I think
Dave,
that's it.
Yeah, you know what the music means, man. Austin versus McMahon is our top WWE WWF feud. And let us know. Hit us up on the Facebook, email us, get us on Twitter, @Working Fans Podcast Facebook page. Get in our YouTube comments. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, and we will see you next week.
And remember, don't hang out with dog shit.